Welcome to the 37th episode of Redeeming the Time. Can you believe we've done 37 or 36 of these? It's crazy.
I had somebody this week say, you don't need to tell what number anymore, but...
You got to.
You got to, all right.
I'm your host, Jacob Wells. This is my dad, my co-host, Keith Wells. Two Jacobs. And we are glad you are joining us. You can reach us on all major platforms. If you want to contact the show, you can email us at redeemingthetimepod@gmail.com.
There you go.
And so today we're going to be drafting another thing.
All right, last week was condiments. Somebody busted in one that I didn't even think of. Thank you. It was
Hot sauce.
Pete and Margo. They picked hot sauce. That wasn't even in my... That wouldn't have been in my top 10. I'm just not a hot sauce guy.
Yeah. Nobody is in our family, really.
No. Yeah, Rick. That would have been Rick's top 3. Different types of hot sauces. So, all right. What's our draft?
Let's do TV shows, and I'll go first this time.
Top 3 TV shows, and once you've picked it, it's off the table, right?
Off the charts.
Of all time.
Yes.
Any genre?
Anything.
Oh,
Any TV show.
Well, then we're not even going to come close to picking
Then
the same
we'll do it
ones.
again.
All right. You're number 1.
I'm going to take it, to be safe that you won't take it, is Clone Wars. Star Wars Clone Wars.
Oh, wow. We are going. Okay. I'm not even thinking that kind of stuff. So you're doing cable and all kinds of... All right.
Sure. The ones I've watched. I don't watch TV.
We need to... Okay, I'm going to set further rules on this. It actually has to be a TV show. It couldn't be a limited thing like 8 episodes. That doesn't count. It had to have multiple seasons. Deal?
Come on. Okay.
Yeah, it can't be like...
Sherlock.
Yeah, that had like
Come
four.
on,
It had like
the
four episodes per season. It did have 3 seasons. Okay, hey, that's a good
They were
one.
like an hour.
I should take that. No,
They're like an hour and a half though.
Those were good. That's a good one. I won't take that though.
I'm not gonna.
24 when 24 was out.
I remember
that was gruesome, but that was good. It got a little old toward the end. It sort of jumped the shark, but that was good.
I remember you watching that.
That's really not my top
Jack
of
Bauer.
all time, but it was good. So
it's not. For my second pick, it's got to be Sherlock. I love Sherlock.
Those were good. If you've never seen those, the Benedict Cumberbatch ones for the BBC, there's like 4 per episode, three seasons, and a Christmas one.
Yeah, they're long.
They're long. Those are incredible.
Yeah, Martin Freeman.
Yeah, that's
Benedict Cumberbottom.
Cumberbottom. Cumberbatch.
Have you seen that?
No, I've not seen that.
They just.
All right.
They never say his real name. Cumber something.
All right.
Cucumber.
Okay, so one of my favorite shows of all time, you've never even seen this show, is Family Ties with Michael J. Fox. I loved that show when I was in high school.
What was that, 80s?
Yes. Yeah, and he was like this young professional. He was in high school and wore a suit and tie to school and had a briefcase, and he was bound for success. He was sort of fun. It was good, and his parents were liberal as could be, and just watching them play off each other, I thought it was fun. You look back now, it's probably terrible. Happy Days was forever. Happy Days was from the late 60s on through probably the mid 80s. It was great. It was a good show. The Fonz and all that.
Yeah. I can't.
You number 2. Oh, you had 2. What's your number 3?
My number 3, I gotta go with a comedy. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I would say.
The early years.
The earlier ones.
Yeah, the last season's not even watchable.
Yeah,
it's not even watchable, yeah.
The ones where they're just having fun and not trying to push an agenda. That show made me laugh more out loud than most shows ever.
Yeah, there was one when I was a kid called Barney Miller that was fun like that too. It was a cop show where just a spoof type thing.
It's just so stupid.
Yeah. All right, my third one. Man, those are random.
Yeah, I've got all over the board.
Boy, oh boy. Okay, if we're going to do that, Star Trek Next Generation. I watched all those through college. Those were great. Every Thursday night, the repeat was on. No, every night the repeats were on. Thursday night, the new episodes came out. And, this is a school full of engineers. Like, campus stopped from 10 to 11 o'clock because it was 9 to 10 or 10 to 11 because everybody was watching Star Trek Next Generation. And then we went back to our homework. Yeah, because we're fun.
Yeah, that just sounds like a blast.
We're fun guys. So that was it. All right, what's your favorite TV show? You've got millions of shows to pick from.
Yeah. It was hard. We got to do that again and do 3 different ones at some point.
So when I was a kid, that you talked about Happy Days, there was I guess it was ABC. They owned Tuesday because it was Happy Days at 8, Laverne and Shirley at 8:30, at 9 o'clock, I forget, and then Three's Company came on after that, and I wasn't allowed to watch that. My parents wouldn't let me watch that one. But they had Boom Boom Boom. They had all these little sitcoms in a row. So
I missed one. We got to do this again.
Oh, okay.
At some point.
You're not going to give it away in case I take it? I'm going to go 4.
Let's do 4.
Okay.
I don't know. No, let's just do it a different time.
Okay.
I'll just... Psych.
Oh, that is good.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I missed that
Monk.
one.
I didn't do Monk. Okay, your 4th is Psych. My 4th is Monk.
Those are so good. It's a crime investigation.
That show,
shows.
yeah.
Those
are worthy of rewatching. They're out on syndication. I think they might be on Peacock.
Peacock.
They definitely are on Peacock because my emblem is Gus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's he's my avatar for that.
How did I not?
Well, there's a million shows.
I know.
That's a.
But I don't really watch. Like, I haven't watched too many shows, and
I watched way too much as a kid. All the repeats used to be on Channel 19 at night, and I'd watch those. So, all righty, let's get into it today.
All right, we got Ezekiel 31 to Daniel 3.
Yeah.
So Monday we've got 31 through 33.
I have to admit, Ezekiel, this second half of Ezekiel was a little rough to get through.
Yeah.
Some of the chapters are awesome, but others you're just like, yeah, okay, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
We've heard that.
31 kind of recounts what happened to Assyria and then likens Egypt to them. And
Yeah. So Egypt, in chapter 29, I guess the prophecies of all the judgment coming on Egypt started. We talked about 2 of those last week. And so 31, the chapter starts with the picture of Assyria as this giant tree of Lebanon, great tree. And at verse 10 through 12, we've got sort of a turning point. And it says, because of your pride, you were cut down.
Mm-hmm.
And speaks of how the world took notice of their fall. How would they not? It was the greatest empire of the time.
They were the top dogs.
Yeah, but they knew it was the Lord that did it. That's what it tells us there. And then 18, so this is going to happen for Egypt as well. So that's what I got out of that chapter.
And it will make the nations tremble around them, shaking their boots.
All right, that's a fairly long chapter.
Yeah, chapter 32, it's further judgment.
Yeah.
This is a lamentation for the land of Egypt.
Yeah, specifically for Pharaoh, but yeah.
And they shall fall into the pit. So Babylon, this is the 4th or 5th time, I think, where falling into the pit of the Babylon coming in and like they're Babylon defeating you is you falling into the pit. I found that was interesting.
Verses 1 and 2 are some interesting phrases there. It calls him, you're like a lion or a whale. It says you trouble the water, but nothing comes of it. So think of a fish sloshing around in a muddy water puddle. It didn't do anything except muddy the water. I mean, it didn't stir it up a bunch of stuff, but nothing came of it. And then it talks about how this beast is going to be slayed, and
sea monster.
Yeah, it's going to be slayed, and judgment coming on it. The other countries will feast on it. The people will be astonished again. Judgment's going to come by Babylon. This is the seventh prophet, starting 17. This is the seventh prophecy against Egypt. So, as we talked last week, Egypt will never, to this day, will never return to the glory of what they were. They'll rise and fall a little here and there, but nothing will be of this magnitude. There, verses 22 through 30 talks about how basically you're going to join the other nations. The graves, the pit, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So that is it.
Chapter 33. I enjoyed this one. Ezekiel as the watchman.
Is this all Monday?
This is all Monday.
Okay.
31 through 33.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a very profound principle here. Obviously, I'm not. Anyway, God is the judge. He judges each person for their actions. And God has set Ezekiel in between the Israelites and him, and he is responsible to teach them. He's not responsible for their response. He is responsible to proclaim the name of the Lord, do what the Lord has told him to teach, to say. And we have the same responsibility where we cannot make somebody get saved or truly listen to what you're preaching, but you are responsible to teach and share.
Yeah, I think there's two levels to that. I completely agree. There's the level for those that are leaders, as pastors, deacons, teachers. If God's put you in that role, there's an accountability there that we actually have to teach what God's placed on our heart and the Word of God, and to try to push some accountability on that. Then there's the second level of all Christians have that responsibility for those that are in our life. Then we'll be held accountable if we do so, but not for if they listen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're not responsible if they don't listen.
Even as a parent, there's comes a point where child has to make choices.
Yeah.
And you can put the best influence in front of them. You can do all the right things, but eventually a person has to make that decision.
Later on in the chapter, we see that the people were talking about what he was saying, but they truly didn't listen or take it to heart.
Yeah.
And how disheartening that is for Ezekiel. Like over and over, we're in chapter 34 or 33 here, and he's followed the Lord and has done what he was supposed to do, but they still will not listen.
So we got a big turning point in the middle of this chapter. So we get to 17 through 20. They claim God's not equal, and he throws it right back at them. No, you're the ones that haven't been equal. And then we're about 7 years, in verse 21, we're 7 years past the first things he says in chapter 1, and the proclamation comes to him that the city is smitten. And Ezekiel, it sounds like he couldn't speak for a bit, and finally after the man comes, the people are left, he starts to speak. And I guess the people that were in the city, now that it had been smitten, there's some that still lived in the city, we know from Jeremiah, and they're like, well, God's left us here now to rebuild, and we're going to be the ones. The guy says, no. Judgment's still coming on you as well. And God lets Ezekiel know, as you just said in the last part of this chapter, they're hearing you, but they're giving you lip service.
Yeah.
So they listen to. He uses the analogy like it's like listening to a nice song. They hear the instruments, they hear it, but they're not doing anything about it.
Doing anything.
Yeah. So then he goes into Tuesday,
34 through 36,
and now God is speaking through Ezekiel to talk to the shepherds, the faithless shepherds.
Shepherds are like the leaders of the land.
Right.
Yeah,
I thought it might have been just the spiritual leaders, but it looks to be the kings, the princes, the people that actually had leadership. And it gives the reasons why. Verses 1 through 10, they weren't strengthening the people. They were spending it all on themselves.
Yeah, you look the part and performing the rituals and stuff, but your sheep are in the mountains. Your sheep are nowhere to be found. They're hurting. They're broken down, disobedient. So who cares that you look the part? Yeah,
you got a position, but you're not fulfilling the duties of that position. which we see all the time. We have faithless shepherds in the United States right now. I mean, you look, a guy that comes into Congress. I don't know what Congress's salary is right now, but it's not very much comparative to. And then within 5 years they're multimillionaires. Well, how does that work? They're spending it on themselves. They're doing the things that feed themselves, while those around them, they set up problems that then they have to fix, and on it goes.
Yeah.
This is the recipe for every empire as it gets towards its end of what happens. I sound like that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just
what it is.
What's going on around us.
And then he shifts his focus to the sheep, or his people, and he tells them that they're not innocent in this either. They have disobeyed, trodden on their eating grass, and they have taken what God has given them and destroyed it. Right. So,
and then God tells them He will be their shepherd, and He'll care for them. And I'd encourage you, as you're looking through this chapter, compare verses 3 and 4 to verses 4 through 16. What the shepherds were supposed to be doing, he says in 3 and 4, which they weren't. Now you see, I will feed, I will cause them to lie down, I will seek, I will build up, I will strengthen. All these things God's going to do instead. And then in verse 23, I will set up one shepherd over them, he says. And he speaks about the new covenant. And this is speaking of the Messiah, the restoration of Israel, a glimpse. We start to see a glimpse of the millennial kingdom. This will be the time, if you remember, we've talked about this before, but there'll be a time, we're in the church age right now, there'll be a time of persecution, there'll be a time of tribulation for 7 years. The Lord will return. There will be the battle of Armageddon, where the Lord will have instant success. He will set up kingdom in Jerusalem, which we're going to find a lot about today. He will set up his kingdom for 1,000 years, the millennial reign. That's what that means. For a 1,000-year kingdom, and it will be ruled by Jesus Christ himself. So as you read some of this today, sort of read into that there's some that's going to be fulfilled when the exiles actually return in 70 years from now, thereabouts from Ezekiel. And then there's also this future fulfillment that will be later on, past our lives when the Lord returns, or maybe during our lives. We don't know when the Lord returns. So, do you anything else in chapter 34?
35 is a shorter chapter. We go back to the judgment on Edom. We get a little bit more on Edom.
Mount Seir, yeah.
Which is a central location in that land. And he was supposed to prophesy against it, that the Lord will make the land waste and desolate.
Yeah, he gives the reasons in 5 through 9. Hatred of Israel. They shed the blood of Israel. Jealousy in 10 through 13. The rough part about this one is verse 14 and 15. It says, the earth will rejoice when Edom is judged. They must have been some fun guys to be around.
Yeah.
If I lived in a desert like that, maybe I'd be that way too. I don't know. But that's 35.
36, now he's supposed to talk to the mountains of Israel. And God
there's this play, Mount Seir, Mount of Israel. Yeah, there's this play off of that in the 2 chapters.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
God promises to restore the land of Israel, restored it from her shame, and the nations will then take notice, see the blessings from the Lord, know that it is of the Lord, and God will make a new covenant with them. And he promises to gather all the scattered people, because they were everywhere, to cleanse it, spiritually renew it, and to bless the land's agriculture.
So verses 26 through 27 are the key to this. Yeah, after the new covenant, as Jacob just said here, these are very similar to, if you go back to Jeremiah 31:33, you're going to see very similar language here. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put it within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. and I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them. So this is different than anything we read in the Pentateuch of how God set up his nation. We now have, this is salvation language.
Mm-hmm.
This is spiritual transformation, not just outside conformity to God's righteousness. This is spiritual renewal and the promise of the Spirit within, the Holy Spirit being given. So this fulfillment comes at Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You know, when Jesus Christ comes and dies for us, and as we put our faith in him. Now this is speaking to the Jews at this time, excuse me, which we'll find it will be for everyone. But that's what we see here. And then the end, like Jacob said, blessings on the land, the crops, the herds, all that kind of stuff. So that's
Chapter of promises.
Yeah, those are verses worth underlining. Plus, you got to think, all this destruction that's happened, all this loss, this is hope. I mean, he now has the ability, his tongue has been loosened, and like he's no longer mute to this. He can speak and share. You are going to be restored, and it's going to be better than it ever was when it comes to that. Then we get to the coolest chapter in the whole book. Probably,
Wednesday,
right?
yeah.
One of the coolest chapters.
Wednesday, 37 through 39, we have the Valley of the Dry Bones.
Yeah. There's a ton of cool songs with this.
I was about to sing one of them, but I don't think they want to hear
Yeah.
that.
Which one? Laura Daigle's?
Yeah.
Laura Daigle's song is pretty cool. And it actually is. The other ones all have like a fun thing because you know how they come together and all that. Hers actually has the spiritual meaning in it. Why I do like her song on that.
So the Lord gives Ezekiel a vision of a valley full of bones that are dry, or bones that have been dead for a while, and
Takes him there in the spirit, it says. So
again, it's one of those.
Is this a vision? Was this an actual place? Did this really occur? Or just a vision?
I don't know.
If so, where do they go once they've been brought back to life?
Because it's the same thing when he was sitting with the leaders or the princes, when he takes them to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And then we'll see it later too.
Yeah. So I don't know. I tend to think it's a vision, but now there's another interesting thing about this is to add. Yeah, they're dead. We get that, but add another detail is it's a valley of just dried out bones. It was very much a disgrace that you weren't buried. So to add that it's not just dead, they're disgraced dead. They weren't buried, which is, add a little detail there. And he says in verse 4, prophesy. So
the Lord gives him the power.
Yeah. The word of the Lord brings them back to life.
Yeah. And the bones rattle together, form a body, but they had no life. And then he does it again, and it brings them life.
Yeah, the word of the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, the breath of life, just like we saw in Genesis.
Yeah.
Until the Lord speaks, that's what brings us life. And that's what brings us life today as well. The word of God as he speaks, and the Holy Spirit. That's just cool stuff.
Yeah.
Through Jesus Christ, and he breathes new life into us. This is physical, and spiritually he does that as well. I always the closest thing I know you've seen that. I think you did at least. Do you remember the Brendan Fraser movies,
yeah,
The Mummy? The first one shows the guy, and he like slowly starts to come together.
Yeah.
That's how I sort of visualize it. Not as probably as
because it
gross.
talks about sinews coming to the bone and
it's
that
muscles.
stuff.
So bones, muscles,
Ligaments.
organs forming,
Into a
skin coming over top of it. I mean, and
See,
hundreds and not thousands of them are coming together, and then he speaks the word.
all from the word of the Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. So how were we created? How was this earth created? God spoke.
Yeah. And it happened.
That's so cool. Then he ends the chapter with verses 15 through 28. He uses another illustration. Like that wasn't a big enough illustration.
The two sticks, right?
Yeah. So they write the name of Judah on one stick, they write the name of Israel on another stick, and then they join them together. And it's just, they'd been split with that civil war. Israel had been taken off by Assyria. They had been taken off by Babylon. Now, when they're going to be restored, they will be a complete nation again.
Yeah.
Now, here's something to consider and study, and I can't give you an answer. I'll be honest with you here. Verse 24, and David my servant shall be king over them. This restored nation. Well, how's that work?
I don't
David's
know.
dead. So is this speaking of the millennial kingdom, and it's a reference to Jesus Christ, the seed of David? Well, it doesn't say that. It says David, my servant, and it says it later on. It calls him a prince at one spot. Is there some restoration of David, or is it just a picture of Christ? I would tend to think it's a picture of Christ. Later he says, my servant David shall be their prince forever. That's where it makes me think it's probably Jesus Christ, a name
Coming
being
from
used because the throne, there's the
lineage.
David, the covenant to David, that there will always be someone from his lineage on the throne. We know Jesus comes from that lineage, and Jesus will rule the millennial kingdom and then forever in eternity. So that would be
Forever and eternity.
Yes, thank you.
Name the movie.
Name that movie. That quote.
All right, now we got chapter 38, and we have the defeat and judgment of God, the protection of Israel.
Of who?
Huh?
The defeat of who?
Of God.
The defeat of God?
No, the defeat and judgment of God.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was like, where are you
no,
going with
God
this?
Doesn't defeat. No, come on. But the first, who is Gog of Magog? What is Magog?
Gog, G-O-G.
Gog.
Gog, Magog, and then it mentions Prince of Meshech and Tubal.
I think I was.
Mm-hmm.
Judgment of Gog.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Judgment on Gog.
There you go.
There you go. We're back.
Okay.
So,
yeah. So there's been a lot of study on that. This is a future prophecy. There's no mention of Israel fighting with them at any time. It says, down in verse 5 that Gog and Magog will join up with Persia, which is Iran, Ethiopia, Libya. I can tell you what it's often been referred to. If you go back to Genesis chapter 10 to the table of nations, when we see the sons and grandsons of Noah, this refers to, these are sons of Japheth and their grandsons. Meshech is the name today of Moscow, and Tubal is the name of Tobolsk, or I never pronounce that right, 2 cities of Russia. Many believe that this prophecy is a future prophecy of Russia attacking Israel. I've heard all kinds of theories why they would do that. From needing the minerals that are down in the Dead Sea. The amount of minerals could set the fortune of a nation that are sitting there in that pool of water. They allied themselves with the surrounding countries, which today are Muslim nations, which that would make sense. And they attack Israel with their armies. Now, this is all just people's theories of what this could mean. Many believe this attack occurs. There's 3 different thoughts. Well, there's probably more than that, but there's 3 different thoughts. Some people believe that this attack occurs and is the launching pad for the tribulation. The others believe that this is picture of part of the Battle of Armageddon. And then there's others that believe that this is the same thing as what we find in Revelation 20, verses 7 through 9. At the end of the millennial reign, Satan has been bound for 1,000 years at that point, and he'll be released. And that verbiage in verses 7 through 9 talk about how Gog and Magog with Satan go after Christ that one last time, and they're instantly snuffed out. And that then brings in eternity. So there's thoughts there. I personally believe that it is the kickoff to the tribulation, that these Muslim nations come, and we'll see that in verses 18 through 23, some sort of, as they attack Israel, some sort of earthquake type thing goes on. Some people think the sounding of it, maybe it's a nuclear attack, not on Israel, but on Russia and the surrounding nations. The reasons a lot of folks believe that is then because they're gone. At that point, the bear, Russia, is gone. And that leaves then the Antichrist, who is coming from Europe, to make this alliance with Israel. The temple's rebuilt. There's nobody, because right now, if they were to go up onto the Temple Mount and try to build the temple with the Muslim nations around it, it would be World War III. But if all those Muslim nations join Russia and attack, and then they're snuffed out in one battle, then he can go in. So that's some of the thought that goes in there, and you can study and decide for yourself. When we get to Revelation, we'll talk about that in more detail. But that's when chapter 38. That's what's going on there. When that time is, that's up for debate.
Yeah.
But they will be attacking Israel, and God will take them out. Chapter 39 goes right in with it. Verses 1 through 10, the defeat of them, and the people will know it was God that did it. That's what it tells us there. And it tells us 11 through 20, Gog has so many killed that Israel will be burying them for 7 months. Vindicated over the heathen, and then the restoration of Israel that occurs there. So when that happens, I don't know on the time frame. I'm sure folks listening have an opinion on that, and their opinion, I hope is based on Scripture as well, and try to persuade me one way or the other. I'm willing to listen on that part.
Yeah. Personally, I haven't studied that as much, so that is something that I want to dive into.
Yeah, for me, prophecy, if it lends you to have a sense of urgency to reach other folks and to affect how you live your Christian life, that is a wonderful thing. If it's for you to sit around and just have pet theories and you just talk and talk and talk and there's no fruitfulness that comes from it, go ahead and have that conversation. I don't really want to be part of that. Because there's a lot of other things that I definitely know that I need to be doing, and I'm probably not doing them. So that's my theory on prophecy. Sorry, I know that disappoints, but many folks that love to talk about that, but I just don't.
Now we got Thursday, Ezekiel 40 through 42, and this is the start of a vision, a futuristic vision that you've hinted at before, talking about the temple that is going to be built during the millennial reign. Maybe.
Or, we can talk about that.
Yeah, so basically this is all one prophecy from here on out, or one
40
vision.
through 48. Yeah, it's all one. We have this man that comes. He has this. It sounds like he's angelic based on his appearance.
Bronze.
It's the same shining that God had.
And he has a measuring rod.
Yeah, he has two things. He has a reed. This sort of like line of flax, it says in his hand, and a measuring reed. So he's got something that can stretch and bend like a measuring tape, and then he's got a rod. So think of him sort of a surveyor type guy.
Yeah, and he was gonna show Ezekiel the temple, and it was Ezekiel's job to remember everything he saw, so he can come back and tell the people that were in captivity.
So this happens the 25th year of our captivity, it says. So this is 14 years after the capture and the fall of the city. So that's where we're at right now. So there's been a long span between 39 to 40. So possibly this is an angelic guy. We don't know. But this man's going to measure out every detail of the temple over these 8 chapters. So, yeah, the question is, you said it's the millennial kingdom temple. Is it? Is it the temple that they're supposed to build when they come out of exile? Is it the temple that's going to be in the millennial kingdom? There's problems actually with both of those theories. Maybe there's not problems. There's just I don't have answers for it. If it's the ones the exiles are supposed to do, the temple they actually build isn't this. They don't build that temple. Maybe they were supposed to and they didn't. I don't know. But it doesn't match up, and therefore it's not fulfilled. But if it's the millennial kingdom, when we get into it, why the description of all these sacrifices? Jesus Christ is there. He has fulfilled everything that needs to be done. There is no need for any more sacrifice. And yet he's there. The completed work of Christ is there. So why have all that?
Because it talks about a peace offering later on.
Yeah. They're supposed to keep the Passover, those types of things. I heard some people say, well, there's sort of like a memorial, like the Lord's Supper is.
What? You don't need a peace offering.
Yeah. We don't see any mention of Pentecost. There's other of the festivals they're supposed to keep, but they don't keep, because the church fulfilled that. So that's not there. So, okay. There's no mention of the veil inside that temple. The veil's been rent. We don't need the veil anymore because we have access to God through Jesus Christ. So that's not mentioned. So that lends it. There's no mention of the ark. So, because we don't need that anymore either because of the Lord. There's no mention of a high priest. There's priests, but not the high priest. There's no mention of the king. So once again, Christ fulfills all of these. So that leads some credence to that this is the millennial temple. Other prophets mention a temple in the millennial kingdom as well. Isaiah does. We read that already in chapter 2 and chapter 60. Jeremiah does in chapter 33. We're going to find out Joel does in chapter 3, Micah 4, Haggai chapter 2, Zechariah in chapter 6 and 14. So there is a temple in the millennial kingdom. So I don't have answers to all this, and it doesn't really change how we talk about this.
It's just interesting.
But I can't explain some of the things that it says that are going to happen.
And why would he show Ezekiel and charge him to remember everything to tell the people as well in captivity? If it's the millennial.
Well, it's recorded now forever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are people right now that have they have things made ready for the temple to be rebuilt. Right now, there are people. There's societies of Jewish priests and that have things ready to go. And they have every detail right there.
It is right here.
Yeah, right. Forever, it's there. So that's more exciting than probably anything else we're going to read here.
Yeah, because it starts the tour at the end of this, of the courts and the walls and the chambers and the gates.
I'm not going into detail on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so then we get into 41.
The eastern gate, northern gate, southern gate, inner court. That's chapter 40.
The only thing I saw were the description of some of the artwork that was around the temple.
Yeah, that was...
Where they have the cherubs facing each other and a palm tree in between.
Yeah, and it had multiple faces on the cherubs as well.
But in chapter 10, we learned that the cherubs had 4 faces, And then here they only have two faces, one a human
Well, it's
and one
two-dimensional. I mean, how are you going to draw? How are you going to draw a three-dimensional person?
I just thought it was interesting.
Well, no. Here's a bigger question. As I was reading, I was like, how did they know what the cherubs look like? I mean, that would have had to have come just from the artisan that God spoke to him, just like He did with the guys for the temple.
Yeah.
The original temple. Because, I mean, other than Ezekiel, we don't read anywhere else. At least I don't think so. We don't read anywhere else in the earlier scriptures of the Old Testament how somebody saw a cherub. So that's interesting. But there are, over top of the Ark of the Covenant, there's two cherubs that face each other, and how
did they know?
They would have known because God inspired those artisans to do that.
Huh.
I don't know. Showbread table talks about that. Dimensions of the temple and the holy place are in 41. 42. I'm just going to go through these if that's okay.
It's all right.
42 talks about the priest chambers, the upper and lower chambers, the walls. It tells why, verse 20, why the wall was there to separate off the holy areas. 43 is interesting. That's a very interesting chapter.
We're into Friday now. 43 is Friday.
God's glory in the temple. God enters the eastern gate.
And then you weren't supposed to. They were not supposed to open. So this goes. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the sun comes from the east. It goes back to Lamentations 3, where it talks about His mercies are new every morning. And the sun rising from the east, God comes from the east into the gate. And they were not supposed to open that gate unless they were to do peace offerings, which I think we see in a little bit. And what you see here is Ezekiel. He sees the presence of the Lord, which by what scriptures have told us, it's like a cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And he hears the voice that sounds like a rushing water coming after him. And he comes in, and he's swept up and taken into the inner court by it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in shock again, and he falls on his face. I think this happened to him like one or two other times, and the Lord talks to him and gives him the reason again why he should be, why he's being shown this and everything.
And God claims the temple. He's going to dwell there. That's the big deal. Yeah. Is he claims he's going to dwell there.
And the whole Eastern thing. That's just another theme or another
Eastern gate. We're going to see this with a couple of the other minor prophets. How when Jesus returns, how he enters through that Eastern gate. And there's some significant things that when we get there, I'll talk about. There's some things keeping that from happening right now that God will take care of like that. That's pretty cool. So talk about that.
It's just the whole sun rises every morning from the east.
Every day telling us.
And he is, yeah.
The Muslims, I'll just give you a preview of that. The Muslims know that scripture. And if you go to the Mount of Olives, so you have the Mount of Olives is on the east side of Jerusalem. And that whole hillside where Jesus prayed with his disciples, it's all filled with tombs of Jewish people. You go down across that valley, back up toward the temple to the eastern gate. That eastern gate has been walled in, and they have buried dead bodies, Muslim tombs, all in front of that. Because to stay holy, you do not touch a dead body. Right? We've heard that over. Priests and high priests never touch dead bodies. He talks about it again in some of these chapters that we get to. And they intentionally have buried people all up that mountainside. I mean, the whole area is just tombs. And we're going to see how the Lord enters through that, what's he do. So that's sort of cool.
Yeah.
Then the interesting thing is, if we're thinking this is the millennial kingdom temple, verse 13 talks about the altar for burnt offerings. And the whole thing that you read in Exodus chapter 29 of how you consecrate this altar, they're making them do it. All the details, same details we read in Exodus 29. So that confuses me. I'm still trying to I'm sure somebody listening maybe has dealt with that. I've not. I'd have to study that a little more. Then Ezekiel 40. We don't want to go there again. Ezekiel 44. Excuse me. Talks about the prince and the priest. The prince's gate on the east once again. Christ's gate. They're permitted. Those that are 4 through 9, those that are permitted into the temple, those that are excluded from the temple. This time it doesn't talk about Jews and Gentiles. This time talks about people that have had, basically that are saved and unsaved during that time. Because there will be people that aren't Christians during the millennial kingdom. Those that have been born during that time, they have a choice. Once, like everyone, they have a choice. They directly see Christ, and what will they do with him?
I also thought about with Solomon's temple, this was a major sin that was going on because there was just a bunch of people just in the temple. So the separation of that again, of the people that are supposed to be in there.
Yeah. Which we see, we just saw Nehemiah, who's after this, he deals with it too.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. Yeah. Then it goes into great detail about the Levites and the priests, how they're supposed to keep themselves clean. Very similar to what we read in the Pentateuch. What their clothing is supposed to be, their actions, some of their inheritance, so that type of thing. 45 goes into the allotment for them, how they were just as Israel was supposed to take care of the priests before, same situation. They live off of the offerings. They have an allotment of land. They don't have an inheritance. They have that is what they have. Then the prince and the people, their allotments, the offerings, an atonement for ignorance. That one confuses me as well. Why they would, and the Passover.
Me as well.
Yeah, maybe the Passover is just a memorial at that point. I don't know. I'm really struggling with that. Ezekiel 46.
So we're in a Saturday, 46 through 48.
The prince's offering at the new moon, the feasts, the festivals, the daily burnt offering, their inheritance. Goes into great detail about their prep areas on the tables.
Yeah.
Then we get to 47. That's a completely new thought there. The river that comes from the sanctuary. It starts this one.
Yeah.
This one definitely makes you feel like it's the millennial kingdom. But he's watching, and it starts at his ankles, and goes to his knees, his hips, basically, and then it's so high, the river's so much that it's deeper and deeper, and he can't go over it.
Yeah, this is...
Is this real?
Yeah, did he actually...
Is this representative? What's it, and if it is, what's it represent? It represents our walk with the Lord as it grows, God's love as it grows.
Yeah, the progressing nature, the depth of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard all kinds of things. But in Christ's kingdom, there will be all this power, so maybe that's what we have some dealing with.
Because it talks about the power of the river as well, and the healing nature of the river, and
it heals life. The Dead Sea. It tells us that.
Yeah,
that's what it's talking about. That the Dead Sea right now, it's the lowest point on earth. It's nothing escapes there, so the water goes down there. It's so hot, it evaporates, and all the minerals are left there, and you literally cannot sink in the Dead Sea. It's the salinity of it is, it's ridiculous high, and there's so much water that it's going to flood that area and heal those waters. So the healing nature of the Lord. Then it goes into
land separation.
Yeah, that's just all the borders, the divisions for the different tribes, and it ends.
So
go ahead.
With that, is there going to be land separation in the millennial kingdom?
Well, I mean, we'll be on the earth,
yeah.
and it's their land. They are still His chosen people. Without a doubt, as you go through this, there will be, God will bring His chosen people back. Even right now, they're scattered all over the world. There's a group of people in Israel, but they're, you go to you go to major places in Russia, you go to major places, you go to New York City, and there's whole sections of New York City that are Jewish folks. I mean, there's more Jewish folks around the world than there definitely are that live in Israel right now. And God has promised them. We're in the church age right now, so there's sort of this hiatus that has happened, and He is definitely going to restore Israel. All of Revelation tells us that. I'm one that believes in the rapture, where the church has been removed, and God will bring His people back, and they will turn to the Lord. They will believe in their Messiah, Jesus Christ, at that point. And He's given them land. They're going to have their land during that time, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's something so far back, it's going to occur again. But as we'll see, He is also, through Jesus Christ, it's no longer just them. Now it's a spiritual renewal, which allows you and I to be part of God's family as well. And so it's wonderful. And the chapter ends, verse 35, the last words, the Lord is there. So the name of the city from that day shall be, that's the name of the city, the Lord is there. And that's how they end.
Finalizes the book.
Yeah, that's how they end it. That's pretty cool.
All right, we got the end of Ezekiel just happened, and now we're into Daniel.
All right.
And so...
So I love this stuff. Guzik had something that's very interesting on this. I like to know, what's going on in the world at the same time. So here's some things that were going on when Daniel was written. The construction of the Acropolis in Athens began. Mayans were flourishing in Mexico at that time. Confucius and Buddha were alive at this point. The
Over
Greeks,
in India?
India and China, yeah. The Greeks introduced olive trees to Italy at that point. So those things are going on at the same time of this.
As Daniel.
So remember, Daniel, this isn't in chronological order with Ezekiel. Daniel's mentioned in Ezekiel. So he was captured, most people believe 605 BC, in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand and part of the vessels of the house. So this is the first takeaway. And he's Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They're taken into Babylon. And so, or I shouldn't have said their name that way, right? It should be Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah are their real names.
Yeah, that's
their Hebrew
Jewish
names.
Yeah, Hebrew.
Yeah.
And you see... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so now one other thing before we get into this, that for you that like that genealogy and numbers, it says here the third year of Jehoiakim, but when we were in Jeremiah 46:2, it says this happened in the fourth year of Jehoiakim. So is there a discrepancy? And there's not. And there's a really cool thing that they have, when we did the book of Kings years ago, I went into some detail on this. There are two accountings for reigns of kings, depending on where you come from. Israel or Judah had one way of doing it, and most of the world had another way. And it depends on who's saying this. He's in Jerusalem, Jeremiah is. So there's the ascension year. So maybe say I came to be king or you came to be king in September. Well, you would count that as a year, right? And next year you would count that as a year. Even though it wasn't a complete year,
you started that year.
You started that year, so you're going to count it as you've reigned 2 years at that point. Where others would say, Daniel here, that until a complete calendar year has happened, those months didn't count. A complete calendar year, that would be your 1 year reign. So when we do this through the book of Kings, we can see there's some differences that go on there. And when you apply this ascension year together, it lines up perfectly. It's really cool. There's co-reigning, there's the ascension year, there's a couple other things in there, but that's what's going on here. Daniel uses one method, Jeremiah uses the other. I don't know.
I like it.
I think that stuff's cool.
Yeah, the thing that I saw in the first is there's more. No, I didn't want to take
more,
you.
no.
I know you give us a.
I like that stuff. I would say some of this is in chronological order, but not all of it. When he starts to go into his prophecies, people don't even believe this book was written when it was written, because his prophecies are so specific that people think that someone wrote it after the fact. But no, this is just God's hand on David. This mighty wise man, where he wasn't even that old, and he's already mentioned by other prophets of how great he was, comparing, would they put him with Job and was it Moses? Was it Noah? It was Noah. Yeah, Noah and Job and him. So
yeah, because there's 2 non-Hebrews.
Yeah, that's pretty high praise.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you set the stage for the
That's
books.
It. I set the stage.
Yeah.
So he's a young boy now, or a young man.
The Babylonian system of indoctrination. So they would take the smartest and the wisest and the most fit and groom them basically to be like their civil service members, and that's where and then everybody else was like kind of thrown anywhere else. But they would take the smartest,
the manual labor,
and they would. So these 4 guys, like we were talking about, Daniel, Hananiah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were taken as some of the smart and the wise, and
this is a different servanthood than we think of when we think of a slave, like chains on your arms. That's not what this is. They had houses, they had wives, they had, they were given, they had a life.
Yeah, because it makes sense too. Because if you have these smart people, they recognize they're still smart.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you just throw them to be like you can use them to be?
Yeah.
And
so the indoctrination is real. I mean, it is. Take them. Did you want to go into this?
Verse 8 sets the stage for me in the whole book.
So they bring them in. They've taken them completely out of their land. They make them learn a new language. They change their name from Hebrew names to now Babylonian names.
Yeah.
So you're hearing different. Your name has been different, so you no longer are identified with your people. And then he even changes what they eat. And so every portion of their life is this attempt to win them over and to, changing the vocabulary, it's just the indoctrination happens here as well. Our colleges are masters of it right now, of indoctrinating people with thought, and it's now getting into our high schools and into our elementary schools. If you get them early, and if you start pumping this over and over and over, you finally give into it. But
verse 8,
Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat. Was there anything wrong with it? I don't know. Was it pork or something like that? Well, it doesn't really say that. It just, he saw and he put a line. Yeah.
He separated himself from the indoctrination.
Him and his 3 friends, which is interesting. He uses Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego later, which is not their name. It's their Babylonian name. But he always calls himself Daniel.
Yeah.
He does talk
Belteshazzar.
Yeah, there's
was the name he was given.
There's this third person, first person thing that goes throughout this book as well, but don't let that confuse you.
You see Daniel climb the ranks. He's given favor, goodwill with the authorities, and he suggests a plan in verses 10 through 13.
Yeah.
And he's gaining the favor, and he is being blessed by the Lord for his faithfulness.
Yeah, it's not all due to him just being a smart guy. I mean, it's God is giving favor with these other people.
He separated himself, and the Lord is blessing him because of that.
Yeah, so don't give me the meat or the drink, the wine that the king's given to all of us to fat us up and to win our hearts over. Give us pulse to eat and water to drink. That sounds great. And that sort of to keep their hearts. And it says that, verse 17, as for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. God did that.
Yeah, I keep saying Daniel, but it's all 4 of them.
Yeah. God, I mean, we typically do that. So then they come before the king, and this guy, the eunuch, he's like, if you don't look good, this is my head. So, he gives them a few days, and sure enough, they still looked good after 10 days. So he lets them keep doing this. And when the king sees them, we get the famous phrase in verse 20, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And then it tells, this will span his whole life. Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus, which is not Babylonian, but he is the Persian king. So we'll see that come into play. That's chapter 1.
So the first few chapters here are the main, like when you think of kid Bible accounts that they all know because they hear it 1,000 times when they're young. These are these accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So Nebuchadnezzar's dream here, the troubling dream, and how Nebuchadnezzar asks his wise men and all this stuff, and they can't do it, and he commands them to be killed, and then here comes Daniel.
Yeah. So tell me what my dream means, but I don't remember my dream. So you got to tell me what my dream was, and then tell me what it means.
Yeah,
that's the key. And they're like, "Whoa,
that's impossible.
We can tell you what it means." Yeah, I bet. Yeah, we can schmooze that around and manipulate that to make it sound good.
Come up with anything.
Yeah. So
which is what they had probably been doing.
Probably. And so Daniel, okay, don't worry, guys. We'll figure this out. And I always love his threat is always, you shall be cut in pieces, and your house shall be made a dunghill. Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
That's always his threat. That's a funny threat. Not to them, but it's just sort of funny. So Daniel prays for wisdom.
In verse 17, he goes back to his buddies.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, has them.
And he uses their Hebrew names.
Yeah.
He asked them to pray for him that he would be able to do this.
And then every time Daniel approaches the king, it's always this way. In verse 20, Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the seasons." So he lets him know. He revealeth the deep and secret things. God. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. So he lets him know. This is from God. This isn't me, my smarts. This has been revealed from God to you. And then he starts to tell about the dream of the image that he has. And this image is interesting. This image deals with, many call the times of the Gentiles, the Gentile world empire. And each of these metals represents a different empire. So we have the gold at the top of this, and that is, it tells us that's Nebuchadnezzar. That's the Babylonian Empire. And then it goes down to the silver, and each of these metals are weaker and weaker. This becomes the Medes and the Persian Empire. Then we have the belly made of brass, and this becomes the Greek Empire. Then we have the legs of iron, the iron of the Roman Empire, but it's 2 legs, so it's split in 2. The Roman Empire splits in 2, and we have the East and the West with Constantinople and Rome. And then we have the clay and the iron together. This is more future, where we have the 10 different that of part of Rome, part of part of clay. This deals, most people believe, with the different countries that will be out of out of Europe, the old Roman Empire. So you can look through that. There's a lot of cool things. A lot of people have different interpretations of all of that, but that's for the most part that's coming. But then the end of it is this rock, the rock that comes out. And what is that rock that's not been cut by hands? It is Jesus Christ, and he wrecks it all for them. His kingdom comes and is the strength of it, and he's so happy to know what's going on. He's the top, so he doesn't care what happens after that. He promotes Daniel to the highest thing, and Daniel says, "Hey, can you bring my buddies along?" In verse 49, and that's what happens. So I'd encourage you. I would imagine if you have a study Bible, it's going to give you more details on that.
In verse 47, the king answered unto Daniel and said, "Of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets." So this is the first time, and then in the next chapter you'll see him also.
He keeps having encounter after encounter with God. God's working on Nebuchadnezzar's heart just like he worked on everybody else.
So then we get into chapter 3, which is another well-known account here, but it's more with his three buddies, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So we know this account. Nebuchadnezzar makes an image and demands everyone to worship it. This image of gold, 60 cubits high, and just a huge statue of himself, and he dedicates it to himself, and he commands everybody to worship this. And you see the whole crowd obey this command, but then there's these three Hebrew men who refuse to do it, and these three are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Which, did this come after? Because they're just promoted here.
Yeah.
Does this come after?
Yeah.
Is this a slap in the face to Nebuchadnezzar?
And Daniel's not mentioned in this chapter either. That's.
So what? Yeah.
I've always thought they were in order, but we just don't know.
Yeah. So Nebuchadnezzar's.
Yeah, it would have been even more of a slap in the face because they've now been promoted. How many people did he know in his empire? I mean, he would have known Daniel because Daniel's one of the top men. But other than that, I doubt he's known many servants. I mean, his pride would not allow him to even look at those around him, most likely.
He just made a statue.
Yeah.
Yeah. A huge thing. So he interviews them, but interrogates why they did this and all this, and they obviously answer, "I'm not going to. I'm not going to bow down to you because you are not my Lord." So what does he do? He throws him into the fiery furnace.
Yeah. Now, verses 17 and 18 are the key verses here. Anyone that's ever taught this, everybody else is bowing down. So
the whole crowd is doing it.
There's other Jews there that are bowing down, and so these young men, we always talk when you teach this. There's some strength that comes with being with other Christian brothers. So I think there's some of that. Verse 17, they're talking to the king, and they say, "If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king." That's bold. He could have chopped their heads off right there. But then the phrase, this is the key phrase, "But if not," if God chooses not to do this, "be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up." Now, they're not rude, because if you read earlier, they're not being rude to him. They're
just not bowing down.
They're just not going to do it. There was the famous, I wish I knew that story. I didn't write it down. There's a story I believe it was during World War II. It might have been during World War I in Britain. This is when, Britain was literate of the Bible. And there was a group of men that went to go do this battle, and it looked like they were just very doubtful they were going to come back. and their statement came back, but if not. They just used those 3 words, and everyone knew what it meant.
Yeah.
That they were willing to sacrifice themselves, even if God didn't spare them in that. And that's the part that's always stuck out to me. God, we have then the form. This is a Christophany, if you want to call it that, where the Lord appears in the fiery furnace.
A fiery furnace. When you told me the story as a kid, or this account as a kid, you would always mention that how hot it was.
Yeah.
And
7 times.
7 times hotter, and the people that were making it hotter actually died because of how hot it was. They couldn't even get close to it.
Throwing him in, yeah.
And so they get thrown into that, and he sees him walking around. And then they see, oh wait, there's not 3. Now there's 4, and and his men come and say, "There's 4 alive in there," and he's like, "Didn't we throw 3 in?"
That's good, and
very cool.
Yeah, so they come out, and it says, God doesn't just like save them from. Remember, they fell in there; they were bound, so they were thrown in, and it says, verse 27, whose body the fire had no power, nor the hair on their heads singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. And this is beyond supernatural. There's nothing beyond, but you know what I mean. This is full extent. This was God doing this. It reminds me of, if you like Southern gospel music, there's an old song by Gold City called "4 in the Fire." That's a good song. So watch that today. That'll cheer you up. That's what we have. And Nebuchadnezzar, from this, doesn't, say, "You guys are incredible." He says, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies." So from this point on, he makes this decree throughout the kingdom that
if you talk bad, if you talk bad about that God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that
you cut you in pieces, and their house shall be made a dunghill. Threat number 1.
And then the last verse, they get promoted again, or the first time, or whenever this happened. But yeah.
So that's it. One of the cooler accounts in all of the Old Testament. Did it happen? I think it did.
Yeah.
I think without a doubt it did. This is the Word of God, and that's not just a story; it is a true account.
Also, if you have kids and you want a fun way of showing them this account, watch the VeggieTales. The VeggieTale version, the Boney.
Yeah, that's
the Boney.
I forgot. Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, I love the Boney. All right.
Thanks for putting that in my head.
You're welcome.
I'll be singing that all day. All right.
I don't know if we said this joke, but this is from Kathy Kemper. She emailed me this. Did you know that it's illegal to laugh out loud in Hawaii? You have to keep it to a low ha. That's like the dad joke of all dad jokes.
That's a good dad joke, yeah. All right, you guys have a great week, and enjoy reading Ezekiel and Daniel, and the following week we're going to be all in Daniel. I think we finished Daniel.
So
you guys have a great week. Love you guys. Bye.